There Theoden fell, Thingling mighty, to his golden halls and green pastures in the northern fields never returning, high lord of the host. Harding and Guthlof, Dunhir and Deowine, Doti Grimbold, Herefara and Hildebrand, Horn and Fastred, fought and fell there in a far country. In the mounds of Mundburg, under mold they lie. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are going to be taking a look at the less well-known Rohirrim in The Lord of the Rings, in what I am calling our Minor Characters History playlist. Not minor or lesser in quality, just in the quantity of lore. And that way we can hit a lot of characters in this one video. Hopefully you all enjoy this. Let me know what other factions or realms you would like to see us cover in this format. My friends, thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale on these Riders of the Mark. Elfhelm, a Grand Marshal of the Mark, a man who played a role at both battles of the Fords of the Isen. While much of Rohan remained dormant as Theoden's corruption took hold, Elfhelm would not. He continued to defend Rohan against all enemies outside and within, even like Eomer and Theodred. Riding hard from Edoras, Elfhelm would take his company to the Fords of the Isen, and while they could not save Theodred, the Prince of Rohan, they did avenge him and slew the orcs, taking back the forts of the river and burying the prince there, that he may hold it evermore. In doing this, they prevented Saruman from even earlier invading Rohan, which probably would have destroyed the Mark overall. After this, Elfhelm believed that the fords probably should be abandoned or held lightly, and the defense of the deepening Hume reinforced. Erkenbrand of Helm's Deep reinforced. Yet, Grimbold would not give up the fords, and as he held the west side, Elfhelm would hold the east side. Saruman would eventually exploit this, however, driving his force right down the center of the river and splitting the two up. During this, in the second battle, Elfhelm was unable to reinforce Grimbold, and eventually, when Gandalf arrived during the night of the Battle of Helm's Deep, March 3rd and 4th, he would give Elfhelm orders to return to Edoras. Though he had served Erkenbrand and West Rohan in these battles, he would be put in command of the Riders of the Eastmark, as the Rohirrim rode to Gondor. Elfhelm would ignore the presence of Merry the Hobbit in his company, allowing him to join them. Elfhelm also knew bits of lore about the Woses, that they used poisoned arrows and so forth, and his leadership would be tested as he commanded the right flank of Theoden during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, taking his men closest to the walls of Minas Tirith and breaking the siege weapons of the orcs. His company found great success in this, and afterwards, rather than joining the host of the West at the Black Gate, he did not follow his new king Eomer in this, but was rather assigned to Anorion and fighting the orc camps near the Druidine Forest, eliminating a threat to both Gondor and the Druidine or Woses. In the end, Elfhelm would be the first to serve in a new title, Marshal of the Eastmark under King Eomer, beginning the Fourth Age in more service of Rohan. Grimbold of Grimslade, a commander of the Rohirrim from the Westfold. He also served faithfully with the prince at the Fords of the Isen, and even after the prince's death. He continued to hold the western flank of the ford, again being supported by Elfhelm on the eastern side. Yet he was caught in a bad area when the bulk of Saruman's forces came forward. Yet he would survive this, and would go on to hold the eastern or left side of Theoden's forces during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. This was closer to the war camps of Mordor and Osgiliath, a very dangerous area. Grimbold would not return from this battle, falling like many other Rohirrim. Eorl, the messenger and scout of Erkenbrand. This was a good man who must have fought at the first and perhaps second battle of the Isen, and we'll go more into Erkenbrand here in a bit, the lord whom he served. Eorl came east after suffering from these battles and caught Theoden's army on the road. Eorl told Eomer that he was too late and it would be best to seek shelter at Edoras before the wolves of Isengard came forth, but Theoden revealed that he was also with this host, that he had been healed, and spoke to the young man, hearing his words as well as the warning of Gandalf to retreat to Helm's Deep. Young Eorl should be commended, for his simple warning may have even saved Rohan here, as Theoden might have been caught upon Isengard's army without the retreat of Helm's Deep. Hama, the door ward and chief guard of King Theoden, perhaps one of the most loyal men in Rohan, kept the door of the Golden Hall of Meduseld, ensuring that none who saw the king, especially during his curse, had their weapons. He would be rather amazed and intimidated by the three hunters and Gandalf, but took their weapons nonetheless, well, except for Gandalf's staff. He would even argue with Aragorn about Enduril, but he would eventually let them through, which would allow for Gandalf to heal Theoden from his curse. Theoden would dismiss Hama for a short time, after slightly criticizing him for his work as a door ward, but this allowed him to free Eomer from the imprisonment that he had been given by Grima Wormtongue, look for some of Theoden's items such as Herogrim, his blade, and arrest Grima himself. Hama would of course remain loyal through the rest of Rohan's fight for survival, going to the Hornburg. Even as Theoden, Aragorn, and the others prepared to ride forth, he served as door ward even then. He held the great gate of the Hornburg by himself, falling before the king rode forth. He would be buried beneath the shadow of the gate, in honor for holding the door one last time. Theoden would mourn for him, casting the first dirt on his grave, despite the king's annoyances with his door ward. Theoden would remember him in his conversation directly with Saruman, evoking his memory that he was hewn before the gates of the Hornburg. Erkenbrand, the Lord of the Hornburg. He was more prepared than most to deal with the onslaught that came to Rohan, having taken some time to fortify and prepare Helm's Deep for what was to come. After the death of Theodred, Erkenbrand assumed command of the forces in the Westfold, and would prepare the Hornburg for the battles that were sure to come to Rohan. Days before the Battle of Helm's Deep, he went forth to aid and manage the defense at the fords of the Isen, or at least near them, which was scattered by Saruman's forces. Gandalf commanded Grimbold to reinforce his numbers ere he came to Helm's Deep with 1,000 men, and help scatter the forces of Saruman there. And he did indeed. With his large red shield and black horn, he came at sunrise, and his forces helped scatter the Uruk-hai into the new forest that had come there. He gave also appropriate justice and mercy to the Dunlendings for them to help repair in the damage they had done, and then move beyond the Isen afterwards. While Erkenbrand was left in Rohan to manage their forces while all the rest went to Gondor, some sort of title or position of honor, probably due to his age, his nephew Dunhir would go and find his end on the fields of Pelennor, sadly. In the end, Erkenbrand became the first to hold Marshal of the Westmark under Eomer. Now for some even more minor characters. Gamling the Old. Who was a captain of many seasons, he helped command forces at Helm's Dyke, which was kind of like a smaller protective wall/barricade almost for Helm's Deep, and later during the Battle of Helm's Deep, Gamling also helped see the plan that the Uruk-hai had with the culvert, and in trying to stop the explosion, he led a counterforce against them but failed, and had to retreat with Eomer and Gimli into the Glittering Caves to continue the fight. Gleowine, the bard and minstrel of King Theoden. Not much is known of Gleowine, but he composed the Mounds of Munburg, poem or song to immortalize the deeds of Theoden on the Pelennor. He never wrote another after this. Guthlaf, the banner-bearer of King Theoden, whose horn would be blown asunder by the king himself as the Rohirrim charged onto the Pelennor fields. He even held the banner of Theoden past his own death during this battle, as he died near Theoden. He was loyal beyond measure, and his banner was taken to Eomer after his death. Finally, we have Deorwine and those in his company, Harding, Guthlaf, Herefara, Herubrand, Horn, and Fastrid, and Dunhir and others that fell on the Pelennor. Deorwine was Hama's replacement as the chief of the King's Guard. He had 6 followers with him that all fell on the fields of Pelennor. And it is important to remember that all of these minor lords and heroes all fell so that the West could see victory, not only on the Pelennor fields, but all the War of the Ring. Luckily, Gleowine would make the Mounds of Munburg song, or poem, and they would all not be forgotten. And there we are, my friends. While there are more Rohirrim worthy of note throughout the history of Middle-earth, these are some of the important, lesser-known and minor Rohirrim warriors during the time of the War of the Ring. And so we come to the end of our minor characters' history. From this tale, we see that the victory and survival, not only of Rohan, but of all of Middle-earth, was built upon the valor and lives of so many incredible warriors, as such victories always are. Hail the victorious dead. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and let me know what other kinds of minor character histories you would all like to see. Let me know in the comments below. Share this with a friend. It really helps the algorithm out a lot. If If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some Lord of the Rings candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or please consider getting some Lord of the Rings statues, swords, other kinds of replicas from our friend Castle Con, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout, and please check out our merch. Join our memberships and Patreon for access to our Discord and our monthly podcast. Thanks to our Valar 2 patrons and YouTube members: Ed Patterson, ComicNet64, Brian Hunley, Peter Sheppard, John Hume, Rhys Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Theodore, Zoomi, Todesmorgen, and Joby Weasel. Thank you all so much. You guys keep the channel going. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today, and I'll see you all again next week with a video on what happened to Melkor after the First Age. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.